Hello, everyone. Welcome. See folks starting to roll in here. So glad to see some familiar names coming in. We always love to hear in the chat as people are joining us where you're watching from. And today would love to hear anything that you are most excited to hear from our wonderful panel joining us today. Feel free to pop it in the chat. We always love to get to know our audience a little bit better. Thanks again for joining. We will give everyone a moment here to get settled. See folks from all over the country joining. Wonder if we have any international folks today. Last time, I don't remember, we had people from all over the world last month. It was very cool. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Well, folks are still rolling in, but I don't want to waste a single minute with this fantastic group of people we have today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining. I'm Marley Wagner. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Digital Customer Success here at ESG. I'd like to welcome you all to our Customer Success Unlocked webinar titled The Economy and Customer Success, the Impact and What to Do About It. As usual, I will be serving as your host alongside my co-moderator, ESG's Vice President of Customer Success, Peter Armley. Hey, Peter.
Hey, everybody.
Before I introduce today's panel, a few quick housekeeping notes. First, our chat today will be fireside chat style, so you won't be seeing slides on your screen, but I promise you're not missing anything. Your Zoom is working just fine. Second, we are recording this session. A link to that recording will be made available to everyone in attendance today within 24 hours. And last, please, we encourage you to submit your questions for our panel at any time. You can do that via the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen. I love it when I have to skip my questions and answer your questions because they're sometimes even better than what I thought of in advance. So that is my favorite thing when that happens. Please pop those questions in the Q&A tab. So without further ado, I want to welcome our wonderful panel today. First, I want to say welcome to Yuman Sang, CEO of TurnZero. Welcome, Yuman. Thanks for joining.
Well, thanks for having me.
And next we have Alex Raymond, CEO of Capta. Great to see you, Alex. Hello.
Hey, hello. Happy to be here.
And last but not least, Chris Hickens, CEO of Nuff Said. Chris, I have to say welcome back to your second time on CS Unlocked.
Yeah, thanks, Marley. This is a great topic, and I really appreciate you including us. I think it would be a great conversation today.
Absolutely. And for some context for that conversation, I do just really briefly want to have each of you give us kind of the very brief 60-second overview of who you are and who your company is, just so we have that appropriate context of where you're coming from, what your view into this really important topic is. So we'll go in the same order I just did. Yuman, you want to start us off, please?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Marley. So Yuman Sang, I'm the co-founder and CEO of TurnZero. And we work with customer success teams at B2B companies. And so if you have a customer success teams and you're looking to scale, looking to grow, or looking to codify the way you do business, we have built a customer success platform for you to work on. So we work with teams in SaaS, in repeat customers, tech-enabled services, and I'd probably work with many of you on the call today. So thanks for having me, Marley.
Thanks, Yuman. Alex, same thing.
Great. Yeah, Alex Raymond. I'm the CEO of Capta, and Capta helps B2B companies get through all the minutiae and process of managing their $1 million accounts. So if you need process and structure around this, you need tools, you need a guide, you need a roadmap for how to really maintain and grow your existing customers. And so I think of this as helping with all the automations around building account plans, from voice of customer discovery to understanding your customers' goals, strategy mapping, and so on. And we know that our approach, at least, is we know that this is not just a technology problem out there. And so we've built a training platform called CamGenius, and we also do a conference called CamCon, where account managers from across the world can come together, share, learn, and grow with each other.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And Chris, give us your quick overview if you don't mind.
Yeah. So for me, my recent experience is relevant to what I'm doing at Enough Said. So at my last company, User Testing, and User Testing is a company that makes it really easy to gather feedback from customers and share it internally. So you kind of bring the voice of the customer alive. We had 70 of the Fortune 100 companies as customers. So I met a lot of the world's top customer leaders. And the same trend kept emerging, which was no one understood why customers are churning and growing. And most of them had unlimited product usage data. They all had and hated their NPS, and no one could tell me whether or not their products were delivering value to customers, right? So that was a consistent trend across the board. So my company, Enough Said, solves that problem. We actually measure the value that you deliver to customers, and we give you a scorecard. In some ways, it's almost like a product market fit scorecard to figure out where you have strong product market fit and where you need to improve in the customer journey. And I'm one of 3 co-founders at Enough Said.
Awesome. Thank you. And, I wanted to just briefly have everyone give that overview because I think it is important to help set the context of what we're going to talk about today, right? We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about customer success. We're going to talk about how the two are related in both directions, right? And the business in between those two fence posts. So, Peter, I'm gonna squeeze in one more real question before I hand it over to you to ask one. And maybe we'll go in reverse order that we just did. So Chris, I'll come to you first with this one. I'm curious how the economy that we're looking at today, which feels grim to some, we were just talking about that right before we got started, how it's impacted your thinking personally as a CEO for your own business.
Something happened this morning. I was playing with my son. He's 2 years old. We were playing with each other in the yard, and he was curious about a bird. So he walked towards the bird, and when he got too close, of course, the bird flew away. But there were like 30 other birds hiding nearby, and they also immediately flew away too. And the birds didn't know why they were flying. They were just kind of acting as in a fear instinct because one bird flew away. And 10 seconds later, they realized everything was fine, and they all landed 20 feet away, and they carried on with their business. And I feel like we're at the stage, I feel like that's a good metaphor for what we're going through, because we've been through this a couple of times in the last 20 years. When I say a couple, it's probably like 4 times. So we're at the stage where all 30 birds have taken flight. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we might have some tough times ahead. And what I mean by that is businesses will grow at a slower pace. Some companies won't be able to raise money. And as a result, some will go out of business. Some people will lose their jobs. Salaries will likely go down. So there's definitely going to be I think we have to acknowledge that some of those things are going to happen. But a lot of that was driven by the fear instinct, right? We all of a sudden, investors, real estate, everyone got fearful. And I think Warren Buffett has the best single line that summarizes how I think about times like this. And what Warren Buffett says is be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. And so where my head is at is, I'm looking for unique opportunities to invest right now as a company, invest in places where others likely are not investing, because I know that the birds will land, right? And part of that is, if you think about the economy as a whole, there are a lot of really wealthy people and institutions that need to be making returns on their money. They've got a lot of cash stored up. So there's going to be a point where real estate or the stock market, they've dropped so low that the fear will go from, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose money, to, oh my gosh, if I don't get back into the market right now, I'm going to miss out on the great upside that's about to happen. So I guess I'm kind of 2 minds. One is I am acknowledging that things could be difficult, but I'm also acknowledging that things are going to get better for sure. And the healthiest way to think about that is thinking about investment, unique investment that you can make as a company that will allow your company to emerge better than everyone else through those investments.
Love that. I love that bird analogy. That visual. It's perfect. All right, Alex, same question to you. How are you thinking about this current economic state we're in right now?
It's been tough. It's been a tough year. 2022 has, really started off with like somebody hitting you over the head with a club. And, especially if you're selling into mid-market, that was really pronounced. I would say the number one challenge that we've been helping people with, and this influences my thinking, is coaching people through telling the rest of their company internally what the account management or customer success team does for the company, making sure that they are internal champions. And when they're able to effectively do that, then they get the resources they need to go out there and be successful. When they are not good champions for themselves, then they get all these questions like, who are you and what have you done for me lately? And, this sort of thing. And so if we can help everyone on this call, but everyone in this industry of customer success, to be really clear on the value that they provide to their companies, then they're going to find that they're able to get resources, solve problems, make an impact, and help their companies grow. When you consider that for the average B2B company, 71% of revenue comes from existing customers every year. In a downturn environment like what Chris was just talking about, let's say your growth rate gets cut in half. That 71% goes to 87.5% of revenue coming from existing customers, which means CS, SAM, CAM, whatever you want to call it, is more important than ever. And so we need to be helping them to all raise their game and communicate better internally to get what they need.
Yes, such a critical point, that internal communication cannot overstate the importance. Yuman, how is this impacting your thinking?
Yeah, I think Chris and Alex did a good job at talking about sort of the external and what you ought to think about. Maybe I'll speak specifically about me as a CEO, and with the caveat that it is different for not like if for workers. I think it's really different. It's scarier now. You'd rather be last year than this year. So I want to get down to the table. As a CEO, it doesn't really change my thinking, right? And I have to think 5-10 years. I'd like to think 5-10 years. And when I wake up every morning, it's like, okay, what's going on today, right? And by the way, the stresses of high growth were actually pretty acute, right? Can you find enough people, or how are you doing against your competitive set? You can't hire the right people. I mean, the stress was there too. And then in the downturn, the stress just happens to be different, right? It's how do I shorten sales cycle? How do I get more activity at the top of the funnel? So as a CEO, if you think about your career, at least your career with the one company in 5 to 10 years, 15 years, it really doesn't change how I think as a CEO. The day-to-day activities changes, but long term, it certainly does not.
That's a great point as well. I love that. All right, Peter, what do you got for these guys?
Yeah, so I just want to switch gears just a little bit, and it's actually going to be, I'll riff a little bit off of something each of you said. I've got a real passion for leadership development. I did it many years at Oracle, and I write about it a lot. I think it's key to any successful company is really developing leaders throughout your organization. So I'm curious from a CEO's perspective, whether you think what we're experiencing with, we've got a lot of forces at play. It's not just the economy. It's like a lot of other things happening too, obviously the war, but demographic changes are also kind of a major kind of force that's blowing in our directions right now. And I'm thinking, do you guys see the world changing in terms of the way you as leaders have expectations for the leaders who report to you? And in other words, we're not, Chris, to your point, I also agree the world's going to improve. But I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was, and in many areas. And one of those areas I think might be the way leaders lead in companies. And so if you talk about investing, maybe that's what we should be investing in. So I'm just curious, let's start with you, Alex. What are your thoughts on it from a CEO's perspective? Do you think your expectations of leaders are going to shift or change at all?
Well, between pandemic and now and economic recession, there's so much change going out there that you sort of rely on these this truism that everything is in constant change and constant flux. And so the thing that we value more than anything else is closeness to customers. Okay, so that's what we value. That is what all of us do, is spend time with customers. It's kind of like the main thing that we're constantly talking about when we get together as a group is what are we learning? What do we know? The agile mindset, as you all know, is the person with the best information who's closest to the customer should be making the decision. And so I believe that to be true. And I think now, more than any other time, you need to stay close to your customers. You need to be coached on how to interact with them, how to have the difficult conversations, how to ask the hardball questions, that sort of thing. And so, for me, if there's an area where we personally at Capta spend time and always need to spend more, it's with our customers. And when others ask me about that, my first response is, how much time are you spending with clients? How are you enabling your teams to get out there and talk to customers so they're learning and then feeding all that back to the company more than, to me, that's like the most critical skill right now.
Yeah, so I think that's I think that's right. I think that we talk all the time about investing in our customers' success, of course, but I think there's tactical ways to really nurture that, and I think you just called that out. It's expecting more precision from leaders, not just the CEO, right? So, Yuman, what do you think from your platform and top of Churn Zero and all the customers you have out there? You got a lot of leaders in place to kind of execute your model, right?
Yeah, we do. I think bigger change is coming, Peter, actually. And that's driven by really the rise of remote work. I think how we evaluate each other and your leaders, how you develop your leaders, we'll see a fundamental change in the next 10 years. You're not going to say, oh, well, that person's fantastic because they do good work and they stay long hours and they work harder. There's a lot of face time. That was sort of 20 years ago now, right? Sort of how you advanced up the ladder, and that just cannot be the way it happens anymore. So I think remote is something that I think about a lot as more and more of us are going to either partial remote, hybrid remote, or full remote. I think we probably should all behave as we're a remote first company, and so just get really good at that. And that's not. And when I say those words, those are easy words to say and very, very hard to do. And so that's really where I'm spending my time. Certainly demographic trends is sort of with millennials and Gen Z. I mean, they have slightly different expectations. I'm a Gen Xer, right? And certainly the way I advance is very different than the way a Gen Z will advance. So I'm watching out for that demographically, but I think the big structural change is remote.
Hopefully they'll spend less time on airplanes. That's one of the benefits of remote is you can talk to so many more customers. You do so much more without the travel that us Gen Xers might have endured in the past.
Well, I think the CFOs are going to be happy that there'll be a lot more inspection around expenses now. I was at the TSIA conference this week, and I had a conversation with a very senior, I'm not going to name him, very well known in the industry, and he feels that we need to see more of a sea change in terms of the very senior leadership just moving on, because there's still a mindset out there that, to your point, Yuman, remote work is a huge thing, and a lot of the senior leaders are still unwilling to accommodate that. And I think we'll see winners and losers there. But I think he made a really good point. There needs to be a generational shift, and I don't want to kind of brush everyone with the same brush, but I think that's something we can probably expect to see accelerate in the next 5 or 6 years. Chris, curious your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, well, I think everyone on this call has now lived through 4 once in a generation economic busts.
Yeah.
Right. We had 99, 2000s, we had 2008, we had COVID, and now this. So in some ways, I'm kind of scratching my head thinking, like, how many once in a generation economic busts am I going to go through? When COVID hit, one of my investors called me up and said, look, this is different than everything else we've seen before. It's going to completely, you got to hunker down for like 5 to 10 years of disaster because of COVID. And, we had 9 to 12 months were pretty rough, but then we all got remote work as our main form of work. Many of us got to drop our commutes. I mean, our lives are way better now than they were before COVID hit, or at least we got hybrid work out of it. So I guess Peter, I don't buy into the fact that this is a this is the one shift to rule them all.
Yeah.
I think probably what we should expect is a new normal where at least once a decade, we have a major shift in markets as, investors take a step back and look at how companies are being valued. I think the skill set for leaders to be thinking about now, about developing, is resilience.
Right.
This is maybe the most important skill that especially mid-level managers can learn, because all of your team, every employee that works for you is getting hit nonstop with doom and gloom. Friends are getting laid off. Maybe your company did a riff, morale is down. And so you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to be a leader where every single person that works for me is feeling bad right now. They're fearful, they're worried. So one of the important skills to develop as a leader is to be able to both acknowledge the fact that things aren't great, to create space where people can feel that way and it's safe to do that, but also that you're seen consistently as someone who thinks positively about the future, focuses on solving problems. And I think that's in terms of skill and developing mid-level leaders, that's the skill to be focused on right now. One of the things that we do at Enough Said to help enable that is we take the pulse of everyone at the company every 1 to 2 weeks. And every week we're asking a different question, and we're trying to scan for different themes of how people might be feeling. How are they feeling about the relationships with their coworkers? How are they feeling about the quality of work that's being delivered? How good of a job are we doing building relationships with customers? And that's a way for managers to consistently get feedback from the team in a structured way about where the sentiment of the team has dropped, and gives me an opportunity also to coach them on how to have conversations about, kind of hot spots in the company or where the team is not feeling great. So I guess that was not a short answer to your question.
No, but that's a great answer. And I'm just thinking before I pass off to Marley that, if there's people in the audience who think, I don't want to be a leader now if I'm listening to all this stuff, it's just like raising the bar of expectations. It sounds like a ton of extra work. The gratification you'll get, I think, is if it's done well, you'll see better results. Your people will be more engaged. You'll actually see better business results. And that's the gratification, I think, as a leader of a company, is seeing that you're part of the edge of the wave that can push the change that's necessary. Marley, how about you?
Yeah, real quick before I move on, 2 quick questions for Chris about that internal pulse survey from the audience that we got. One, someone's wondering if that survey is anonymous or if employees are attaching their names to it.
Yeah, it's anonymous, and that's really important to get the most honest responses.
Perfect. And then awesome. You saw Tanya's note about if you're willing to share those questions. So
of course. Yeah.
If you want those questions, email Chris.
Yeah, you can email me directly, or Marley, anyone who emails you later, I'm happy to share them with you as well.
Yeah, we'll get those questions to anybody who wants them, because I do love that idea. Rather than doing an annual employee engagement survey or whatever it is, just kind of measuring different things throughout the year consistently. I love that concept. Awesome. Okay, kind of a rapid fire question I want to do on this one, because I want to know the number one thing that you each have seen really impacting businesses overall recently, right? From this current economic downturn, economic uncertainty, whatever we want to name it. That can be either from inside your own business, from observing your prospects and customers. Doesn't have to be a thing you think is a good thing. Could be something you're seeing them do that you think they shouldn't. But kind of rapid fire. Number one thing, Yuman, you first.
Yeah, I do talk to a lot of folks, trade notes, and whether you're doing horribly, bad, okay, great this year, the one thing that seems to be in common is that new business is taking longer for people to buy, right? Everyone's just having 1 or 2 more steps in the sales process, because customer businesses are just more cautious. So the number one thing I see, no matter sort of what the end result is that everything is just taking longer, and that's very frustrating for folks. But I see that commonality.
Yeah, absolutely. then it's seemingly unavoidable right now, right? That's stretching.
Plan for it. Yeah, plan
cycle.
for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Plan for that for sure. Chris, how about you? Number one
Well,
thing.
I think for everyone that's listening, I think a lot of us are in customer success or professional services or support. I think we need to take a giant step back and look at what's happened in the world, which is throughout most of history, so thousands of years, a business was a good business when it grew profitably and generated profit. Software companies, especially SaaS companies, have been held to a completely different standard around top line growth rate. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think we could have a long conversation about that topic alone. But, the guy who predicted the 2008 downturn, his name is Michael Berry. He recently pointed out that, there's 218 public companies in the United States with a market cap over $1 billion, but with a net loss of $100 million per year or more. Right. So in by standards that businesses have been held to for the last 1,000 years, these are bad businesses. So what we're seeing in terms of a shift is inevitably a downturn causes everyone to go back to good business principles, which is how do you build a company that grows predictably and generates profits? So everyone will be saying all of their CEOs and CFOs focused on cash in the bank, the company's burn rate, the path to profitability. And if you want to understand generally where your company is going to go, you'll want to understand for your own company, how profitable is it? How much cash is it burning every month? Where are areas where the company intentionally overspent, where it's likely to pull back? So you can actually do a pretty good job yourself of predicting where the company will continue to invest and where the company will start to pull back in terms of investments. So that's, I think that's the one thing, right? That's the one thing where businesses are the most impacted.
Yeah.
So Chris, let me say that I agree with you, although I don't think it was, I think CEOs are very rational folks, right? And so the last 4 or 5 years, however you want, to call it, where growth was the number one metric. It was the metric that was rewarded, the metric that got you, got your employees rich, got you rich, got your investors rich. And that's a fully rational thing to do. And so, it was just a game that was on the field, and it was the measure in which you were scored. So I think everyone's playing a rational game. The game's changed, okay, and so those, who can't make the adjustment will hurt this year. But I just feel like it may have been maybe the rules were irrational, but the players were acting rationally.
Wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think the game that's been put in front of CEOs is a game where for most of SaaS's history, top line growth rate was the game to be played at any expense. So screw the profitability rate. We're going after top line growth because that's what investors are rewarding. So I 100% agree. And when you said the game has changed, one of the biggest things that's changed in the game is investors are starting to look at retention rates very seriously, right? Something like, I looked this up recently, 18 of the top 20 SaaS companies report their retention rates publicly now as part of their K1 filings.
Wow.
So it's, and their 10Qs. So I agree, the game has changed. And I think, Yuman, to your point, I think for that reason, a lot more pressure is going to move to customer success in the next couple of years. But there's still an element of top line growth and profitability now that CEOs will have to balance.
We have an excellent follow-up question from our audience on that topic. But before I ask it, I want to hear Alex's one thing.
The thing that I see is I see a big mistake happening out there. The big mistake is companies cutting CS teams or cutting account management teams and expecting them to get the same results as before, or even worse, they're overhyping this idea of we can do stuff low touch or at scale. And I'm here to remind everybody that your $500,000 customer, your $1 million customer, your $5 million customer doesn't want to talk to a bot. They don't want to answer a survey. They don't want to just be a cog in some machine. They want real attention from a knowledgeable partner who can help them get through the same difficulties that we are all going through. And so when I see people cutting the human element of how we bear hug our customers, I think this is not going to play out very well at all for the companies making that mistake.
Yeah.
It's got to
By the
be a
way,
balance.
yeah, and I think, Alex, to that point, it's actually for the customer leaders on the call, if that happens, it's your fault. I'm serious about that.
Yep.
If the CFO is cutting your budget and expecting you to hit the same retention rate, it's your fault. And a lot of that is training and learning on how to have these conversations with the CFO. And these are all skills that you can learn. But I agree with you, Alex, but also CS leaders, it's time to really step up here, because opportunity here to save budget or even have additional investment in CS as a result of this market shift.
Well, Chris is either a mind reader or he also is looking at the Q&A, because no surprise, we have a fantastic question from Bob London. If a CFO needs to make cuts, how presumptive will they be about seeking cuts from CS? Chris, since you're already on the topic, you want to?
I went over to the QA and I didn't see it. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. So if a CFO does need to make cuts, which many CFOs are, right? Yep. How presumptive will they generally be about seeking to cut customer success, making cuts in customer success?
Yeah, you can always count on Bob to throw a curveball in there for you.
Great question.
All right, so the way that I would coach CS people to talk to their CFOs is to start by looking at unit economics of the business. And unfortunately, we don't have time to go into a lot of detail about what I mean by that. But here's the high level. The CFO needs to be looking at how much, for every dollar that the company makes, how much money did the company spend to build a product? How much money did it make what percentage of revenue is spent on retaining the customer? What percentage of revenue is spent on acquiring the customer? And if you look at all those as kind of different unit economics of the business, what you'll see is that, okay, if growth rate is inevitably going to slow, and if the cost to retain customer is going to remain fixed, then the only intelligent choice to make is to scale back on your sales investment to make sure that you don't blow your cost to acquire customers out of the water, and instead keep the cost to retain customers fixed, because that's the investment that will allow the company to preserve its most valuable revenue, its most predictable revenue. So there's actually, unfortunately, we don't have to, I have a whole talk track that we can go into about this, but that's the high level strategy I would take with the CFO proactively right now before they make any of these decisions about cuts they're going to make.
In my experience, Chris, to add to that, I would say CFOs understand the unit economics. They understand the dynamics. They're typically more of an ally of the CS team than others, including potentially the CEO, right, or even the CRO, who don't understand the margin dynamics. The fact that existing customers are way more profitable than new customers. They're more likely to be upsold. They're more referenceable. There's just so many positive dynamics to that. And so I actually see the CFOs often being more of an ally or potential ally than enemy. It just takes the CS leader, account management leader, needs to figure out the language to speak with this person and to get what they're looking for.
I think, Alex, you're absolutely right. The CFO is your ally. They knew about NRR before you knew about NRR, right? So, and the conversations you can have with the CFO, I think are will be high bandwidth. Now, to your point, to the question, will they be presumptive about making cuts? Absolutely, they're going to be presumptive about making cuts. They're going to do the math on. They're going to do the math on where cuts need to be made, and whether CS is first on the list or last on the list will probably depend on how well you're doing and how overstaffed you are, or understaffed you are. I mean, I would not, I think it's hard to sort of put a blanket on that. I mean, CFOs are going to try to do the model, and if they do their work well, they'll say, yeah, you're under capacity, so you got to get to capacity, or we're going to get rid of some folks, or if you can sit down and have the conversation that if you're asking me to do more with less, this is what the NRR and GRR is going to go to, and then this is the resulting, return on lack of investment, right? So I think those conversations have to be had. You should expect your CFO to ask for a pound of flesh, they will ask for it, expect it.
You know, actually, Yuman, when I'm hearing you talk, it's bringing up a thought for me, which is we always talk about this idea that like we need to go out there and cut costs, basically like reduce team size and stuff like that. What if, on the other hand, it was like we need to cut unprofitable customers? We need to segment our customers in a way that we're just keeping the ones that we really want to work with, who generate the right economic returns, and not the other ones, for example. Like imagine a boardroom or executive team sitting there saying, which customers should we cut? Wouldn't that be amazing?
That I hear that all the time, and it makes total sense, but I never see it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, I never see it happen because it's just too hard. I mean, it's hard to lose revenue. I mean, it's the lifeblood. It's how you pay your vendors and pay your employees, and just saying goodbye to customers. Like sometimes you have to do it. You have those crazy customers, you have to do it. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, Alex.
Well, a big part of that probably is the cost to retain that expensive customer is still infinitely cheaper than investing that same cash to go acquire a new customer. That's probably why it never actually happens.
Yeah,
but
efficiencies are hard to translate into an external message.
Yeah, and Yuman, I think I agree with you that the CFO is going to be presumptive. Maybe another way to frame this is that, if you can kind of imagine the CEO and the CFO are under a lot of pressure to increase the company's profitability, it actually creates a really big problem for customer success, especially if customer success is included in the company's COGS or variable costs. Because the CFO is highly motivated by the board and from investors to maximize the company's gross profit, or at least the profit margins, right? You get a higher valuation with a higher profit margin. So if customer success is seen as dragging down the company's overall profitability, meaning customer success is in COGS decrease your overall profitability, of course the CFO is going to come after customer success. And so one of the skills to learn as a CS leader is how to position some portion, maybe the majority of customer success costs, not as a variable cost, not as cost of goods sold, but instead as cost to either cost to retain customers or even cost to acquire revenue. And I think there's a really good argument to be made there. And if you can do that, then you have less of a target on your back when the CFO comes around snooping around for ways to increase gross profit margins.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that, Chris, probably 3-4 years ago. It's like, where does customer success live?
Right.
And which part of the balance sheet of the expense statement. And I hear about that less now. I think most folks sort of feel like in COGS you have support, you have implementation often, and basically this is what you need to deploy the product. Exactly. And then the rest of customer success tends to get lumped into sales and marketing, right? So below the line, below the COGS line. So if you're not that, by the way, if you're not that, you're probably comparing yourself, to your peers, you're going to be at a loss. So I would encourage you to talk to your CFO about aligning that way, because I think most companies are aligned that way now.
You're probably talking to very advanced customers, Yuman, because I definitely don't get that when I'm talking to people.
Oh, you don't get that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so I feel like we're actually touching on this topic a little bit in and out, but so I want to ask it anyways. So customer success and revenue, it's an endless debate and a topic in the community at large. But what I'd like to know is whether the current economic climate makes the case for or against stronger. Let's start with Yuman.
You mean having CS own revenue?
Yeah.
Renewal, expansion, cross-sell.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a never-ending debate, and so the question is, does the downturn? I don't think it actually. To me, I don't think it changes the conversation, right? I think the argument stays the same, and of course, my answer is that the more economic, the more of the business you can own, the more powerful your organization is. quite simply,
Yeah.
right? You know, if all you're owning is a just customer satisfaction, right? You know, if NPS is your driving force, yeah, okay. But if you get, renewals, fantastic. If you get expansion, unbelievable. And cross-sell is, we can certainly talk about that. You know, you may not have the team that's going to cross-sell, but we've seen that as well. But I would say go for, retention, of course, go for expansion. If you do that, your ROI conversations are going to be important, and your department you'll have a huge seat at the table, and you're going to have much better conversations with the CEO and the CFO. You have to do that. Yeah, I don't think the downturn actually changes that.
Okay, and before I pass it off to the other guys, I had a talk yesterday with a conversation with a senior leader, and he said they're having great success in customer success and taking on more responsibility for revenue. But what it's doing is it's exposing all this now tension within the company. Sales is getting super defensive. There's all this kind of like friction that's happening. So the CEO can't just, wash their hands of this matter. They have to get involved. And so just a caution, just a notification for all the CS leaders out there. You're asking for this, but be expected. It's a lot of work to actually make it happen.
So Peter, you're talking about the change, right?
The change.
Yeah. Change management, no matter like which way it goes, it's always going to uncover nonsense. So yeah, I think I think anytime you're asking for change, feel 3 months of negotiation, bad feelings, bickering, those things will happen. Yeah.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
But, for me, I don't understand why this is a debate. The biggest complaint I hear from CS leaders is, oh, we just get treated like we're glorified customer support. Well, guess what? If you're not willing to step up and own revenue and be a part of the revenue machine, you are glorified customer support. And so, if you want it and you want to not only have that seat at the table, but just sit down in it, right, and join the conversation, there's no better way to do that than by making revenue commitments and being a really big part of that process.
Yeah, we're talking skills and persona differences too, right? Chris, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Alex and Yuman did a good job summarizing the CEO's perspective, which is, look, if you don't own a revenue number, you don't own a number that I care about, full stop. And you don't own a number that the board cares about. Now, I think, Peter, like you said, there's skill sets and role different, there's a lot of nuance that goes into the conversation of whether or not CS should own revenue. The impact to customer success of not owning revenue, of course, is like what Alex said. You don't get a seat at the table. You're going to get smaller budgets. You're going to have a lower salary compared to your peers. You're going to have less influence. That's just the way it's going to play out. And you're more likely to report to the CRO rather than the CEO. And when I think about, the biggest argument I've heard, and it comes actually more from CSMs, which is, CSMs will say, I don't feel like I shouldn't have to own revenue. I should be able to be a champion for my customers. I should be able to be a customer, an advocate for customers. I should be able to be a trusted advisor, but I shouldn't have to own revenue. And the reason why I'm always confused by that argument is because, as customer success people, we are really good. It's in our DNA to deliver value to customers. We know that instinctively. And doing the renewal, doing the upsell, doing the cross-sell, that you're actually adding a lot more value to the customer by doing those activities. You're making the customer's life better. So I guess it's all, I haven't actually quite gotten to the root of this, of why CSMs often think that upsell and cross-sell has to be this dirty car salesman type thing. It's actually a value add activity where you are more trusted and liked by your customer if you're able to deliver that value all the way through, rather than getting them to the 99% line and then handing it off to someone else and saying to the company, look, Bob is better at creating value for the company than I am. So I'm going to go give the glory to Bob when I've done the first 99% of the work. So that's kind of that's where my confusion. I still have that confusion. I wish more CSMs would look at sales as a value add activity, because I think we would have much more successful CSMs with that mindset.
Right. I think in the end,
if you believe that the customer is better off by keeping your product or service because they're getting value out of it, then that is selling. Then part of your job of delivering value is making sure they continue to do so. I hope that's not too simplistic, but that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. I think even more simplistic, the scorecard of business is dollars. It's the scorecard, right? I mean, you may not like it, but the scorecard is dollars. It's not happiness. It's not anything else. It's dollars.
Yeah. But Bob London just said that, a lot of times CSMs are seen as the nice people. Great. Nice people also add value. I mean, I think the thing about customer success is, I think the difference between success and support is great success people love to drive value through the relationship, right? It's not a transactional thing. It's like, I want to add value to my direct customer, Mary, and I want her to get the most out of her experience. And so with that mindset, you can be both nice and ensure that Mary is getting value. So I think they're, if you're just nice, maybe you should be in support, frankly. If you're nice and you're helping to drive value, then you're a great candidate for customer success.
I always like to try to take the customer's point of view, and I've been in this role and I've interviewed lots of customers about this topic, and they invariably say, if customer success is doing their job the way we need them to do their job as customers, they're the ones I want to have a conversation with about expansion. I don't want to go to the sales because my business, what I need to happen. You should know your products, and you should recommend to me what I should be investing in next. That's what I always have heard, So.
And then it doesn't feel as icky, right? For lack of a better word, right? It feels more genuine. It feels, this person knows me, cares about me as a customer, and is making this suggestion based on that information that they have, right? Rather than a sales interaction. Yeah.
And if I think about all the great sales folks that I've worked in the past, nice is a word I would describe all of them. I would describe all of them as nice. They may be different in other ways, right? Driven in different ways, but nice is certainly an adjective I would place on every single one of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sherry, you said, is CS the new sales? I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't say that is then you start maybe getting into turf wars. So it's it creates unnecessary tension with the sales team. I think it's fine to say that CS should own, net retention rate and own it by delivering more value to customers.
Although some tension between sales and CS is necessary and important and valuable, right?
That's
Which
right.
is a whole other topic we could spend an hour talking about. I know
you guys all know Jason Lemkin, right? So I asked him on Twitter recently, why doesn't Salesforce rename their company if they truly believe in the customer life cycle?
Yeah.
He said it's all about branding, of course. I knew that answer, but he didn't dispute it.
It's a good question, Peter. All right, we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to try and leave time for one more of our questions and one more audience question. So I want to know what each of you would tell a CS leader coming to you for advice. What's your best piece of advice you would give a CS leader who is, trying to have those conversations with their CFO, trying to defend churn when the churn happened because the customer's budget got cut? When the CS leader is maybe a little too nice to their peers, right? And is not necessarily standing up and speaking up for what they need. What advice would you give those CS leaders? Alex, let's go to you first.
I'm gonna continue the thought that I had earlier, which is the number one job of the team is to be close to customers. And that will help you understand the customer dynamics. It will help you understand what's going on in their world, what they like, dislike, and so on. It will also, very importantly, help you to understand what are their desired outcomes, or to put it another way, how do they see value in what we're doing? And when we can understand value and what it means to them, then we can go back internally to product, to marketing, to the CFO, et cetera. We can say, hey, here's what the customer is thinking about. Here's what they're talking about. Here's where they're going. And that's going to give us a leg up, whether we're in a recession or not, getting close to the customer and really understanding. The reason why is all of our sales motions, our CS motions, so many of these things are internally focused. They're self-centric. And if we really want to crack the nut of being customer-centric, we have to go out there and spend as much time as we can with the customer and document what we're learning and share that internally. Be an evangelist internally for what the customer cares about. So I think if you get in that position, you're truly indispensable as a CS leader or as a CSM.
Yes, 100% yes. I'm not even going to comment more than saying that. Yuman, what is your piece of advice for our audience?
So if you're a CS leader, you're probably already good at working with customers. I'm going to make that assumption, and you want to be, say, a CCO at some point. So for those of you who are on that path, I say you have to embrace the commercial part of CS and the operational part of CS. Those are two different parts of CS. You want to be a full stack CS leader, right? You want to be able to show that you can make customers happy, that you understand the commercial aspects of CS, and that you also know how to operationalize CS, right? Which is, by the way, probably the newest part of CS, right? You know, how do we make CS a high functioning, the best functioning organization, you know, in the company? And that, of course, ops is a big part of that. So I would say, you know, if you haven't already done so, embrace the commercial part and embrace operations.
Love it. How about you, Chris?
I've been advocating for CS leaders to have a more influential role on the executive team for a long time. Partially it's because I've always been a customer obsessed leader. I've always wanted my customer leaders to be stronger voices at the table. I wanted customer feedback to be present in decision making. And one of the way that my kind of brain has meandered over time is we've been talking about this concept of customer-led growth for a while, but it's kind of evolved to the next step, which is, I think, potentially the most valuable role that the customer leader can play on the team is to own product market fit for their business. No one on the executive team, except for the CEO, owns product market fit. And when I say product market fit, what I mean is there are moments of value delivery across the entire customer journey, right? Is product doing a good job delivering impactful features that are easy to use? Is engineering building a stable, reliable product? Is sales acquiring the ICP and setting expectations correctly? Is marketing delivering high value content and effective pricing? Is ProServe offering high quality, trustworthy consulting services? Right, it goes on and on. Customer success actually doesn't own most of the touch points that deliver value to customers, but they are the closest ones to the customer. They're actually the only executive that can scan that entire journey and report back to the executive team where the business is accumulating risk in product market fit and where it's accumulating opportunities for growth and expansion. So a lot of that thinking, actually, I'm just going to give a little plug here. We just published a new magazine called Product Market Fit. We actually published a super popular magazine for customer success leaders. The newest version, literally hot off the presses, I got it yesterday afternoon. If you're interested in learning more about this concept, go check out my LinkedIn. I just posted this a couple hours ago. Marley's chapter is chapter number 8 on digital CS. And we had like 40 plus people from the community help write this magazine. But the short story is I think the path to the CS leader not only being an important member of the team, but maybe the most important member of the team, is by helping to give the company visibility for the first time ever into the company's overall product market fit. And by the way, I've pitched this idea to a lot of investors and they are all over it. So if you can be the executive that gives investors this kind of information at the board meeting, you're suddenly the most important part of the board meeting every 3 months. So that's where my brain is going for advice for CS leaders.
That pushes the envelope. Thank you.
Yes. And we'll include a link to get a copy of the magazine in our follow-up for folks too, Chris.
Great.
Peter, do you have one more last rapid fire quick question for these fine gentlemen?
It's not rapid fire.
Well, we're gonna make it be.
I did want to ask if they had a quick kind of one-on-one on how they do annual strategic planning. And what I want to get at is, how do you make that exercise very powerful for your company, knowing that you're only working with your senior leadership team? Is there a method, an intentional method you use to make sure that the planning translates into kind of like cultural push? I'm going to challenge Alex first.
You're talking about internal planning, like upcoming
Internal
planning
planning.
for 2023 and
Is
and
the
that type of
season.
thing? Yeah.
Internal planning.
You know, if you don't understand who your customers are and where your customers are going, you're doing it blind. I've been, as many of us on this call, I'm sure I've built plenty of spreadsheets that lead absolutely nowhere because they're just based on guesses and assumptions that I have not bothered to test.
Okay.
And it's the testing of the assumption that is the most critical. We were actually having a conversation about this as a team the other day, and I said, the way that we win at this game is the assumptions we're making about the world. And it's the thinking that we're bringing to the world. It's not such and such a feature, such and such a marketing strategy or what have you. You know, like those are all pretty well known, and, you know, you're going to have some innovation and some laggards, but generally speaking, can you get the assumptions about the world correct? Can you test them properly and build them into your model?
And how they fit with your business. That's excellent. Thank you. Yuman, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, are you talking about budgeting or planning?
Planning.
Peter, planning.
Yeah.
You know, so when I do planning, annual planning, that's generally looking 3 to 5 years out, right?
Okay.
And otherwise, you know, if you're looking 1 year out, a few months out, I think it's quarterly or even monthly. So, but that's true for budgeting as well. So I'm trying to not have planning and budgeting be on such a long scale. I want, you know, near term to be monthly. You know, so we meet month, you know, our budget is updated monthly, and it rolls out the models monthly. And then when we do annual planning, we do try to look further out, right? So I think that's always when you're really small, I don't think you should do that. I think when you're really small, you're really looking to prove you have a reason to exist. And I think that's more monthly and semi-annually. But then the bigger you are, I think, you know, you have to do it just quarter by quarter. That's my personal approach.
No, that's smart. That's actually
Yeah.
good nuance. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'm going to double down on what Yuman said, which is I think most companies do annual planning wrong. And I'll just say that in the interest of being controversial. Yes, I think if you're a big company, a la Google or Salesforce, absolutely you need a structured way to roll out annual goals, OKRs, et cetera. But most companies change a lot. They get a lot of new information every month and every quarter, right? New products, new features, new customers, new markets, new competitors, new employees, new government policies. And so somehow we're supposed to be able to set goals that will last a year given constant change. Yeah. And so I think, you know, think about 2021. We spent probably a month of our salary planning for 2022, and then bam, right? Economy, Ukraine war, spiking interest rates, you know, oil prices, economic recession, layoffs, and all that time went to waste. So, you know, Bill Gates, he says, you know, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Right.
So my take is, I think a more motivational approach for most people, and I think it follows what Yuman just said, which is start with a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. So everyone at the company knows where are we headed together. Yeah. Have a high level strategy for how you're going to get there, right? We're going to go enterprise. We're going to go more product-led growth. Have a general strategy that everyone understands. Obsess about your core values, so everyone knows how they should interact in this world that you've created. Build a a fantastic set of core metrics to monitor the health of each team in the company, and then set goals that will last 3 to 6 months. And I would say the goals, the shorter the better, right? Because in an annual goal setting practice, what happens? January through June, you're like, oh, the annual goal is too far away, I'm not going to think about it. And in the last 3 months of the year, October to December, you're like, well, what are next year's goals going to be? I don't know how to think forward in the future. So anyway, I think annual goals are a waste of time for most companies.
Yeah. So you guys are all saying the same thing, being nimble and resilient.
Yeah.
Smart about it. Good.
That is a
That's good.
fantastic note for us to wrap up on. I want to thank everyone for joining us to hear from this wonderful panel. A reminder to our audience, you will receive the copy of the recording of this session within 24 hours. And I hope you'll all join us again next month for the next Customer Success Unlocked. Chris, Yuman, Alex, thank you all so very much. It was such a pleasure having you join us today. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for joining.